Somewhere in the cosmic void, a spaceship drifted, filled with the voice of an astronaut. He was comforting a woman who remained on Earth, promising her that he would return very soon. He listed the things he would miss during his journey, but most of all, he said he would miss his little sister, a blue-eyed artist who would grow up without him and surely achieve great success. Meanwhile, on Earth, in a small, nameless village in the French countryside, his sister Elsa stopped to paint a large green letter F on a black astronaut statue displayed prominently at the village entrance. Elsa worked as a nurse at a local retirement home and always kept her sketchbook nearby, capturing anything that interested her. That day, she reported a patient's condition to her colleagues, but when a friend and co-worker mocked her for an awkward phrase, Elsa began explaining what she had meant, using a drawing. Her supervisor scolded her, but Elsa continued regardless. When the workday ended, Elsa returned home, where it was revealed that her supervisor was also her mother. Elsa greeted her younger brother Vincent and hurried to the basement, which served as her father's office. They exchanged news though, as usual, there was nothing new to tell. Her father asked her to stop painting on the monument to Frank, explaining that it was vandalism. He added that the village mayor had repeatedly asked him to rein in his disobedient daughter. Elsa, however, became angry, blaming her brother Frank for disappearing without explanation 3 years earlier. Later that evening, Elsa told Vincent stories about the times they had spent with Frank. She recalled how they used to talk endlessly and imagine a massive spaceship coming to take them away, saying goodbye to their parents before setting off on comedic adventures far from home. Unlike Elsa, Vincent barely remembered Frank, but he listened with great interest. Their conversation was interrupted by their mother's voice, reminding Vincent it was time to come home. Before leaving, Elsa suggested they look at the stars one last time and lamented how a streetlight made it impossible to see them properly. Vincent joked that they should smash the light. While he worked on that, Elsa suddenly heard Frank's voice. She jumped up, unsure of where it was coming from. Just then, Vincent extinguished the streetlight, and the two siblings froze, struck by the overwhelming grandeur of the starry sky. The next day, Elsa resumed her routine at the retirement home. She performed her duties with care, cleaning, bathing, and dressing an elderly woman who thanked Elsa and called her beautiful. The woman shared the recipe for her favorite dish, which she remembered vividly, though she failed to recognize her husband, Monsieur Le Bon, when he visited her later. Elsa's friend then announced she would be moving to another city with her brother, leaving Elsa deeply upset. Out of kindness, Elsa offered to drive Madame Le Bon home. That evening, Elsa went to a youth club. Even while dancing and having fun, she continued sketching during breaks. On her way home that night, she spotted a large dog standing in the middle of the road. It looked at her car as if it had been waiting for her. Elsa got out and followed the dog into an alleyway, where she found a woman lying on the ground. Checking for signs of life, she discovered that the woman was alive but drunk, and likely homeless, as she appeared to sleep there often. Returning to her car, Elsa felt restless and didn't want to go home. Instead, she drove to the hill where she and Vincent had admired the stars. She couldn't stop thinking about Frank's voice. Sitting in the same spot, she suddenly heard it again. This time, the voice didn't fade. Frank told her that he was glad to hear her. Elsa asked where he was, and Frank explained that his spaceship had veered off course. Now, he was surrounded by darkness and emptiness, with no surviving crew members. The voice she was hearing came through mysterious beings that surrounded him. They were everywhere, even in his mind. Frank feared he was dying. The beings had told him there was a way for him to return, but only Elsa could make it happen. To begin, she would need to find a seed that would allow them to communicate. It was nearby, under her feet. Elsa searched and soon found a transparent capsule with a stem resembling a peculiar seed among the stones. She inserted it into her ear. Frank's voice immediately became clear and loud. He confessed how much he missed her, and Elsa told him about the statue erected in his honor. The next morning, Elsa woke up at home, feeling a liquid dripping from her ear. Panicked, she rushed to the bathroom to remove the seed, but it seemed to have taken root. She pulled out a long, white, fibrous strand, and as she tried to tear it, she suddenly heard a voice telling her to stop. Thinking she had imagined it, Elsa pulled more of the strand and prepared to cut it with scissors. The voice repeated the command and punished her with a painful sound wave that struck her eardrums. Elsa collapsed to the floor, calling out to Frank. However, the voice informed her that he was currently inactive. The beings had put him to sleep due to low oxygen levels. They were around him, and now in her head. Elsa pleaded for them to leave her, but they declared that they needed her as much as she needed them. They promised to bring her brother back if she fulfilled their demands. Their main rule: she must tell no one about them. At that moment, Vincent entered the bathroom and saw that Elsa was unwell. She lied to him, brushed off his concerns, and sent him away. The voice asked Elsa to follow a path that only they could see. In return, they promised to bring Frank back. They explained that they needed 5 bodies, and Elsa had 3 days to find and bring 5 people. The beings did not reproduce, so humans need not fear a large-scale invasion. No one would ever know they were there because they remained invisible. Following the voice's commands, Elsa drove to a spot in the forest and began walking along the path visible only to the beings. To ensure she could find it again, she marked the path with paint. Elsa obediently followed every instruction, but the voice suddenly asked what a hostage was. She realized the creatures could easily read her thoughts. Calmly, she explained the meaning of the word. The being tried to apply the term to the current situation, attempting to determine who the villain was. Tired of their philosophical musings, Elsa asked the voice to be quiet. Suddenly, the voice ordered her to stop, explaining that she had veered off course and must walk straight ahead. Elsa argued that a tree grew at that specific spot, but the voice insisted. The path must go exactly there. Elsa inspected the tree as the beings explained that her brother was directly behind it. Elsa returned to town and went to a woodworking shop where her acquaintance Augustine worked. He explained that the tree required proper documentation before it could be cut down. Elsa pleaded, insisting it was just a tree. Augustine pointed her to his senior colleague Jordan, who had the authority to decide. Eventually, Elsa convinced the men to help her. They grabbed a saw and headed into the forest. When they arrived, Jordan questioned why they needed to cut down that particular tree. Elsa claimed it was part of a bet and offered him money. Jordan refused but began the work. When the job was nearly finished, he asked Elsa to complete it. She took the saw, and Jordan helped her, making his romantic interest clear. Finally, the tree fell. Elsa asked the men to leave, but Augustine had already returned to the truck. Jordan started making advances on Elsa. When she pushed him away, he tried to force himself on her. Elsa reached for the saw lying nearby. At that moment, Augustine reappeared, shouting at Jordan. In the chaos, Elsa directed the saw toward Jordan's groin. She crawled down the newly revealed path and looked back, seeing no one behind her. Returning to the spot, she found Augustine's cap. A moment later, he emerged from the forest. The voice informed her that the exchange had been successful. No one would notice. However, the second body had proved unsuitable and had disappeared forever. 4 bodies remained. Elsa demanded to see her brother. When she insisted, the voice caused her pain with a sound wave. They reminded her that they now had Augustine and could take her too if she resisted. Suddenly, Elsa found herself aboard a desolate spaceship, walking its corridors. She saw her brother Frank asleep. She touched his face and his grown beard. It felt as though she had been transported into a comic book she had drawn as a child. Frank's voice reminded her of the comic, and how she had once forbidden him from looking at it. He had secretly submitted it to a youth competition, where it was rejected. Now he asked how her artistic pursuits were going, adding that he would be proud of her when he returned. Time ran out, and Elsa returned to reality. She and Augustine drove back to town, though Elsa could not understand why she had to be the one to decide. She asked Augustine to say that Jordan had left and would not return. She also insisted that he smile constantly to maintain his disguise as Augustine. Later, the voice informed Elsa that only 3 days remained. The transition could not last longer. Elsa's mother treated the scratches she had gotten in the forest, while Elsa went to the storeroom and found Frank's clothes. Vincent told her that Frank was never coming back. Curious, he asked why Elsa drew people. She didn't answer, but instead asked him who he would sacrifice to bring Frank back. The boy considered it and concluded it should be terminally ill people or those with no life left to live. The next day, Elsa organized a trip to the forest for the elderly under her care. She divided them into groups and took 3 people along her path, explaining that the walk was good for their health. The elderly grumbled, but followed her. The voice assured Elsa that they would not feel any pain and wouldn't notice anything. However, when 2 of them had already passed through the tree, the last elder stumbled and fell. Elsa rushed to him, and the other group members arrived, canceling the exchange. Later, Elsa's mother scolded her for being careless, reminding her that she was responsible for taking care of the elderly, and that the forest trip had been dangerous. Her mother wondered what was wrong with Elsa and why she couldn't seem to recover. After all, this wasn't her life. She and Elsa's father had been deeply affected by Frank's loss, taking many pills to cope. Elsa's mother said she saw her son everywhere, but he was gone, and they had to move on. Elsa, being young and full of potential, should focus on being happy. Later, the voice explained to Elsa that they didn't die but transitioned from one life to another, reaching the end of one path and starting a new one. They wanted to be human, to feel, and to live in the moment. Elsa insisted that living without dying wasn't truly living. They just wanted to exist. At the lake, Augustine found Elsa and told her that a man on a motorcycle had arrived that morning, looking for his brother Jordan. That night, Elsa heard Frank's voice begging to be left alone. The voice told her that time was running out and that 2 more bodies were needed. Elsa pleaded with them to stop pressuring her, saying she was already trying to solve everything. Even Elsa's father noticed her strange behavior, but she dismissed it as fatigue. She remembered the homeless woman, found her, and took her to a restaurant. Elsa explained that she sketched authentic characters for a comic and wanted to make the woman one of them. The woman shared her life story, and Elsa became convinced she was the right choice. She led the woman to the tree, but the woman's dog suddenly broke free and ran away. The last person Elsa chose was Madame Le Bon's husband. She took Madame Le Bon, already inhabited by a being, to his house to suggest one final walk in the forest. While Elsa explored his home, Madame Le Bon discovered her husband hanging in a noose. The being informed Elsa that Madame Le Bon was now the last option. If Elsa didn't find anyone, the being would return, and both she and Frank would suffer. Elsa begged them not to harm her brother, Unexpectedly, she saw a young man walking his motorcycle along the road and realized who he was. She offered him a ride since it was raining. He agreed and talked about searching for his reckless brother. He assumed Elsa and his brother were friends and asked about Jordan. To avoid his questions, Elsa turned up the music. The young man mentioned that he knew Elsa was the astronaut's sister and insisted that Frank couldn't have disappeared without explanation. Seeing her sketches, he praised her work. Sensing her nervousness, he asked how she was feeling. Then he began talking about his dreams of becoming a chef and opening a small restaurant, even describing the name and logo he had designed. Hearing this, Elsa abruptly stopped the car and ordered him out, leaving him bewildered. Driving away, she sobbed and begged to speak to her brother. Frank's voice greeted her, and Elsa apologized. She said that if she could, she'd live in a dream where he didn't exist. She asked questions, but there were no more answers. With only 10 minutes left, Elsa walked the path alone, just as the heroine in her comic once had. The drawn girl sat in a chair beside her brother, and together they gazed at a massive planet ahead. Sometime later, Elsa drove with the homeless woman's dog in her car. They arrived at the coast, where they ran and played along the shore. Elsa eventually stood still, gazing out at the sea. The film left a sense of confusion and disappointment. Despite the director's attempts to immerse the viewer in philosophical depth, it came across as a simplified parable about letting go. However, the creators did pose one critical question quite directly. How do we determine the value of human life? And can it truly be weighed to decide who matters more to the... If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next movie breakdown. Want more? Check out our recap of similar movie right here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.